Guys, Manga Time once again. I'm here to bring you my review of Fairy Tail 439 Alvarez Empire. But before we begin, I just want to apologise for not finding time to review Naruto or Fairy Tail last week. I was very busy and as such they just didn't get done, unfortunately. Which is a bit of a shame. But last week's Fairy Tail was a relatively big deal as they actually chose the new Master of Fairy Tail, which was Erza, which I felt was a relatively predictable choice, but not a bad choice necessarily. And this week sheds a bit of light on what happened to the Master, and also seems to be the prelude to the next arc of Fairy Tail. Every time I feel like Fairy Tail gets closer to the end, it just continues to pull away, which I think is interesting. Anyway, Erza's going underground now with Mest, who originally was known as Dorenbolt until he got his memories back and revealed he was actually a part of Fairy Tail all along, Dorenbolt being a member of the Mages Council. The Council obviously no longer exists after all the Tartarus stuff. But yeah, this is a good chapter actually that has a heavy focus on plot. So basically, Mest takes Erza underground under the fairy tales where the guild used to be, and I love the artwork as always in Fairy Tail. As always, the backgrounds are incredible. And there's like one little bit early on when they walk across this platform which has the Fairy Tail emblem on it, which looks great. And basically, Mest shows Erza Lumen Histoire, which we've known about since at least around the Tenro arc, I think. But basically, it's Mavis's body, Mavis being the first Fairy Tail Master, encased in some kind of chrysalis form underground. Why it's there, we don't really know. It's some kind of weapon, perhaps. Maybe they can revive Mavis in her actual human state, rather than being the kind of spirit that she is at the moment. But anyway, Erza's like, really surprised, obviously. But then Natsu and the others kind of show up and they kind of ruin the mood a little bit, especially since Mest has already said to Erza this is supposed to be a For Your Eyes Only situation. So that those guys come up and just appear in like a comedic moment kind of kills it a little bit. But for the progression of the story, I suppose they kind of need to be there. But anyway, Lucy kind of covers Natsu's eyes when he sees the fact that Mavis is naked, which I thought was kind of interesting. But basically, Mest begins to explain just what the hell's been going on all the time, and he gives them his own memories in their mind. And basically, 9 years ago, or at least 7 for the guys who were affected by the Tenro Island arc events, we see a younger Mest talking to the Master. And basically, Makarov tells him that he needs him to infiltrate the council and basically tell them information in regards to stuff to do with the West continent. And basically, Mest is like, I'll get rid of my own memories, and then I'll be able to do this, I'll be able to do a really thorough job. And he doesn't do it initially. Makarov tells him not to, but about a year or so later, he decides to, because diplomatic relations with the West have been cut off, and things have basically gone to shit. And so basically, we see now that Mest doesn't know who he is, and he goes as Dorenbolt. He's like, what business does the Master of Fairy Tail have with me, etc., etc. And it's interesting seeing it from a different perspective. And then we get this it gets a bit trippy because Mest posing as Dorenbolt decides to become Dorenbolt it's really weird. Basically, Mest posing as Dorenbolt decides to pose as Mest to get information on Fairy Tail, who he actually works for. And it's just a bit that's a little bit, it's kind of funny. They make it into a bit of a joke. But we then get to see the Grand Magic Games, and that's when, Mest realises who he is again. And basically we had this nice little bit when Mest says that he's not quite finished, that he can still bring the information that Makarov needs. And then when Tartarus is dealt with, Makarov is given the information he needs, and he decides to act on it. Basically, the crux of this chapter is Makarov learns of a new power building in the West Kingdom, and he decides to break up the guild. And it's known as the Alvarez Empire. This new enemy, presumably an enemy anyway. And they tried to invade Ishgar, which is the country that Fior is in, and they wanted to get Lumen Histoire. So it seems like we're building up to what appears to be a big full-scale battle, a big full-scale war arc, possibly, which is pretty crazy. And we discover that, the Council's weapons like Etherion and Face from the Tartarus arc were all used as deterrents to stop Alvarez from coming into Ishgar. But obviously none of them exist anymore because Fairy Tail have destroyed them all, which I think is interesting, that these Council weapons have been turned against the good of the people, and now they left defenseless. That's a nice little twist, and I quite like that. So now they have literally no defense against this massive nation known as Alvarez. And basically, Makarov wants to disband because he doesn't want Fairy Tail to be caught up in this impending fight, I believe. And all the guilds in Ishgard come together, about 550 guilds. All the guilds of the West Continent, however, are about 730 guilds. But the difference is, despite the big disparity in numbers, the Alvarez has pulled all of its mages guilds together to form one super militaristic empire, Alvarez. And it's like, so that's some crazy magic-driven empire. There's no, I don't think there's any kind of single guild anymore. They've all fused together in one ultra guild. And this is what I'm talking about in Fairy Tail in terms of the architecture here. The artwork of Alvarez is absolutely stunning. The intricate detail on show here is incredible. You know, I was saying, like, Kubo in the latest, not the latest chapter, the chapter before the latest chapter of Bleach, with Varvelt, the tower appearing, it just looked insanely good. Mashima then goes and blows it out of the water with Alvarez, which just looks incredible. Seriously, the man's architecture is on point. But yeah, so basically we have this new enemy has arisen in the West called Alvarez, and it's made up of 730 guilds worth of mages, basically. And they're a military might. And I've seen a bit of disruption in the forums. People are like, oh, well, you know, Natsu's capable of one-shotting war gods. That doesn't mean anything anymore. And I understand. I completely understand where you're coming from. Natsu one-shotting the war god was bollocks, honestly. However, them annihilating Avatar, in my opinion, wasn't a big deal. Avatar was just a random group of zealots. Alvarez, from what Mashima is telling us, is a proper force to be reckoned with. Like, you know, an actual militaristic group that was come together for the conquering of Ishgard and the stealing of Lumen Histoire. So basically, Makarov's plan, they've told us in a rather roundabout way, is he's going to head off to Alvarez, try and barter with them, or not so much barter with them, but threaten them that if they try and attack Ishgard, he'll unleash Lumen Histoire, which of course we don't really know what it is. And since Makarov has disappeared, I can only imagine his negotiations didn't go so well. I doubt he's dead, but I imagine Alvarez have kidnapped him or something like that. But basically, he's disbanded them because he doesn't want the guild to come after. He doesn't want Alvarez to come after Fairy Tail, basically. And it's very reminiscent, in my opinion, of when Makarov tried to take on Hades in the Tenro Island arc. And, you know, he does everything for the kids because he considers himself their parent. You know, he might be their boss at times, but he considers himself their dad, basically. And I think that's really nice. It's a really good sentiment. And Makarov is just a great character. He's a great character. And basically, you know, Mess is kind of like, you can't do this, you're going off to die. But Makarov says, you know, I'm carrying the lives of my family on my back, and that's what it means to be a parent, and that's the end of the chapter. So like I said, I think it's leading up to the new arc. Obviously, everyone's going to try and go to Alvarez to get Makarov back, but Alvarez are going to be quite dangerous enemies, I think. Whether we'll end up in a full-scale battle between Alvarez and Ishgard, I'm not entirely sure. But, yeah, this, again, as always with Fairy Tail, this upcoming arc has potential, so I'm interested to see what comes next. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to talk about in this week's chapter, because it is basically just the Master's, what's happened to the Master, and building up this ominous new foe. However, I will give it an 8 out of 10. Incredible artwork, great, some good plot development. It seems like we are moving away from Zeref and the human technology era again, which is a bit of a shame, but, you know, Mashima's clearly got more stuff to tell, so, you know, c'est la vie. So let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought of this week's chapter of Fairy Tail. Did you enjoy it? Let me know. What do you think of the possible new villains, Alvarez, and do you think the Master is going to be okay? You know, maybe they've killed him? You know, Mess did say it's like you're going off to die. I do find that unlikely, however. So that's it from me this week, guys. Please share this video with your friends. Give me a subscribe and a thumbs up. I'd super appreciate it. But until later in this week, if you watch my Bleach or Naruto reviews, I'll catch you later. See ya.